What's up, guys? I'm back and I'm doing 5 significant deaths in comic books. My fifth pick for this is going to be X-Men number 95, and this is the death of Thunderbird. And in this issue, man, they actually are fighting the Anti-Men and Count Nefaria, and they pretty much won the battle. And Count Nefaria sets basically his base to blow up, and Thunderbird and Banshee are in the hangar, and they see Count Nefaria take off in a jet, and Thunderbird, doesn't want him to get away, so he jumps on top of the jet and hangs on and starts tearing the jet up with his super strength, because he has super strength. And Banshee's following right along beside him, telling him, "Hey, I could, take the plane out if you just get off." And Thunderbird refuses to get off, and so they're flying through the air, and Professor X starts communicating telepathically with Thunderbird, telling him, to get off the plane. It's not safe. And Thunderbird, tells him, get out of my head. You're not the boss of me. I'm not listening to you no more. And so, from all the damage that he's doing to the plane kind of explodes and loses control and ends up smashing into a mountain, killing Count Nefaria and Thunderbird. And so that intel is the first ever death of an X-Men that's permanent. Jean Grey died a few times, but she came back. Any of the ones that I like, but to me, this is the one that sticks because Thunderbird died and he never really came back. He was replaced basically with his brother. And so it was just like, that was just like they just gave, Warpath. Well, at first Warpath was Thunderbird, then he switched it to Warpath. But this was like one of the significant deaths to me because he never came back. He stayed permanently dead. And this was like one of the first times an X-Men team member died and stayed dead. And so that should be recognized as a significant death to me. So that's my number 5. And number 4 is my favorite character. He would have ranked higher on here, but there is 3 more that are actually kind of higher than his. And it's Captain Marvel. This is just the life of Captain Marvel. This tells a little bit about, stuff that happened to him. But the way he died was very significant because he was one of the first superheroes to die, not from, another supervillain, not from some, tragedy. He died from cancer. And he was like the first superhero to die of cancer. And it was just like, nobody had ever heard of that before. And so, whenever that happened, he got the cancer when he was fighting Nitro. And Nitro had this canister with I believe the gas was called 13. Something would do with 13. And it was leaking into the atmosphere. And so Captain Marvel grabbed it and used his hands and closed and sealed the container, but in doing so ended up getting, well, there was like terminology for it. They had at one point they said, I believe it's on Titan, they call it inner decay. The Kree, I believe, called it what was it, I think it was the darkness or the blackness or something like that. It'll be in the picture that I put up. And but it's on Earth we call it cancer. And so what was cool was Captain Marvel knew because he had omnipotence, like, he can see, kind of omnipotency. That's what he basically had, but he was using it towards in his body to where he could tell like there was something wrong with his body. And so they ended up checking him out and they confirmed that he did have cancer. And what was cool about the death of Captain Marvel, this novel right here, graphic novel one, was that the respect that people showed him. Spider-Man came and stopped by and seen him. Even the Skrulls came and seen him when he was bedridden and gave him a medal. The Skrulls are the Kree's like number one enemy, and they showed respect to Captain Marvel because they were like, "You are a great warrior, and we're going to give you this medal, and for everything that you've done for your people and this planet on Earth." And it was, a pretty cool moment. And then when he was like towards the end, he has a vision of Thanos at the foot of his bed, and Thanos, is like, "You're my greatest nemesis, my greatest archenemy. Now get up and come with me." And so all of a sudden, Captain Marvel hops out of bed, fully, in uniform, and they go on a journey. And at the end of the journey, he meets up with a woman shrouded in robes, which ends up being Mistress Death, and she gives him a kiss. And they walk off into the white light, and in reality, he's passing away, and they even showed like he flatlines and passes away, which is, if you haven't read The Death of Captain Marvel, you need to go out and read it, get it, find it, get it, download it on ebooks or whatever you have to do. But it's a real touching death. It's very significant. That's why it's my number 4. And the next one on my list, number 3, is going to be the death of Superman, which is caused by this fellow here, Doomsday. Doomsday is the bringer of death to Superman, basically. And the fight, I remember when this happened, when this came out, like, I thought, nobody could beat up Superman. And when I seen this fight, it was just so brutal and so, just for that time, bloody. For the 90s, it was a bloody fight, and it was just like brutal. And just like the hits, you could just, from the way Dan Jurgens and all these artists drew the fight scenes, you could just feel the power in both of the Superman and Doomsday. It was just, an amazing fight. And for this to go down the way it did, they both ended up supposedly killing each other with one mighty blow to each other. And I mean, it's just like, it was just one of the best fights I'd ever seen. One of the best storylines at the time in the 90s. It was on the news. It was like worldwide news that Superman was dying. People were clamoring out to comic book stores, wherever they could find these books and buy them up, because they thought, I'm going to be able to retire off of this. This is amazing. This has never happened. They're killing a major superhero that's been around for decades. And for that to, to even be thought of back then was, crazy. We're killing Superman. But they ended up doing it. And to me, it marks significancy, because this was like one of the reasons that it was significant, because it was just like, it had never been done before. Nobody knew who could do it until they brought Doomsday in. And then it was like, when it happened, it was kind of like they said caused the crash of the comic book market of the 90s, because it was the start of the crash, because like everybody clamored out. This book was so, mass produced, and everybody went out and bought, all these books from it, and then it was just like the market crashed, and it kind of just, went down from there for a while until it, we resurgence now, to where we're, you got comic book movies everywhere. You have comic book stories on TV, streaming services. And to me, this is a significant death, because nobody ever thought Superman would die. And it counts to me because it did a lot for, it was in pop culture. It was just like there. Superman was dead. People were buying books. People that didn't even collect comic books were buying comic books, and it was, just amazing. So that's my number 3. Now I'm gonna do some honorable mentions because I didn't do that in my last video, even though I said I would. But another honorable mention to me is Crisis on Infinite Earths, number 8, The Death of Barry Allen. To see the Flash die, and he was gone for a long time. They replaced him with Wally West, and I love Wally West to death, and he was he was like the best, for a long time. And now, spoiler alert, they've gotten rid of Wally West and brought Barry Allen back, and so Barry Allen's the Flash. He's been the Flash for a while, but now they've just taken away Wally West, where it's just Barry Allen as the Flash. And that's one of my first honorable mentions. And the other one, and you can guess, it's kind of a theme, Crisis on Infinite Earths, number 7, The Death of Supergirl. When this happened, they were rebooting DC, and they just, basically took her out and made, everything, the continuity, they made it more fluent, so they ended up getting rid of her. And so this was just like a very significant death, because Supergirl had been around for a while too, and nobody thought that they'd get rid of her, but they ended up killing her off too. So that's my second honorable mention. Now, my number 2 death, I will just put up a picture because I don't own the book. And I don't even know if I could ever own the book, but it's Detective Comics 33, and this is it's a very, and it's ingrained in pop culture. It's the death of the Waynes, Batman's parents. That is a very significant death, because without their death, there would be no Dark Knight, no Batman. There would be no Robin, no Nightwing. None of these characters would exist if Joe Chill had not shot Thomas and Martha Wayne in Crime Alley and left Bruce Wayne alive to mourn over his parents and to develop himself into one of the world's greatest detectives, and to have to me, one of the best rogues galleries out there. You've got, the Joker, Scarface, as well as, Scarecrow, Two-Face, Mr. Freeze, the Riddler, Solomon Grundy on occasions, even Deathstroke. All these characters in this book right here on this cover are, some of his best rogues galleries villains. The Penguin. I wouldn't say Catwoman anymore, because they have a thing going on, but Catwoman at one point in time. Killer Croc. A lot of these guys, were, just great villains for a great character. And like I said, without the death of Martha and Thomas Wayne, there would be no Batman, no Robin, no, nothing like that. So to me, that's a significant death. The Wayne's death spawned one of the best characters in comic books. So my number 2 is the Waynes, and which made Batman possible. Now my number 1 is another book that I don't own, but I'll put up a picture, because I'm not saying that I won't ever own it. I'm gonna try to own this book, but you should already know by now, the number 1 significant death to me in comics is Ben Parker, Peter Parker's uncle. Now, it's an awesome thing, because the death, when Peter Parker got his powers, he was all about making money. Hey, I got to make money. He wrestled Buzzsaw, excuse me. He wrestled Buzzsaw or Bonesaw, one of the two. I can't remember. But he started out wrestling, then he became like a TV personality, doing tricks with his web shooters and things like that. And he just, was that's all he cared about was making money. And then like when the place got robbed, and the cop was like, hey, stop that guy, and Peter was like, I'm gonna have to do that. I'm not worried about that. And the guy gets away, and later on that night ends up breaking into the Parker's home, shooting Ben Parker, and escaping. And Peter finds out, he comes home and he finds out, his uncle's been shot, and he's outraged, and he gets dressed in a Spider-Man suit and goes and tracks down the murderer, and it turns out to be the guy that he let go that robbed the place where he was at. And it just like set forth a motion of one of the best superheroes out there, one of the great ones. He has a tremendous rogues gallery as well, but just his story was just like so ingrained in our culture that it's just like you understand as soon as you see Spider-Man what he's all about, why he does what he does, because with great power comes great responsibility. And it's one of those things where it's just like he lives that every day that he puts on that suit in remembrance of his uncle, that he feels that he was the reason why his uncle passed. So he never ever tries to let anybody down, and he always tries, even when he's like, down and out, everything's bad's happening to him. He's, lost his job, or or he's struggling to find, a way to pay for something or help out his aunt. He still puts on that suit and goes out every night and saves at least one person, because with that power he has that responsibility. So he goes out and does what his uncle told him, what was important. And so to me, Ben Parker's death is the number one significant death in comic books. You might have your own opinions. Leave comments if you want to. But to me, these are my top 5 significant deaths. So it was good talking with y'all. I'll see you in the next video, and y'all have a good night.